Hi, I'm Jay Alcazar. I studied at the University of California, San Diego in the George Lab. The big word for what I studied is neuropsychopharmacology, but basically it's the study of how drugs affect the brain, not just physically, but the actual matter of the brain, which I'll explain in a second. Um, they moved to the University of San Diego actually because their building got demolished. They were a private research institution, Scripps Research Institution, but their building got demolished, so they ended up having to transfer over to UCSD. Um, so our main project was the GWAS project. We started we start with rats. So we train rats to become dependent on drugs. So in self-administration chambers, as you can see here. So we wait until they're 3 months old. So we get them raised. So they got them imported raised, and then we have surgery on them to insert these catheters. This is from the box, but we have little catheters inserted in their backs. And then from the back, there's a little tube that goes into the jugular vein by their neck. And so we do that because that's how they get the drug. Up here is where we put the syringes. The syringes go down through the tube into this metal shell for the tubing so they don't bite the tubes off and leak the drug. And then from the catheter, it goes straight into the catheter into the jugular vein. And we have two different levers for them. One of them's for water, and one of them's to take a hit of the drug. So we have two different ones, so that way they know which one's which, and we know that they know which one's which. They're not just pushing the lever for fun or because they're bored. They know when they want water and when they want drug. And from here, after we train them and they take a hit of the drug, they're there for a year. Their life cycle is only 2 years, and so we have them for only 1 year. I didn't have the process of we got to see them actually have surgery, and then we got to train them to learn to push the levers in the rats, which was pretty cool. So you have to actually go through training to be able to handle the rats, and that took us about 2 weeks because there was a lot of paperwork, and we had to go through the university to be able to handle and touch the rats safely and get our certifications. And then after the life cycle, after the process of 1 year, when they went through, they hit their drugs. That's their daily life cycle. We put them down we put them down humanely in the little CO2 chambers, and then we have surgery on them, and then we slice their brains. And so we slice the brains so we can analyze it from. Since there's two different types of rats. We have control rats, and then the rats that actually take drugs. And so we're able to analyze the difference in the brain between rats that were affected by drugs or rats that were addicted to drugs and just normal rats. And it starts as a mess here. As you can see, just a bunch of crazy brain slices in a solution. And then eventually you have to find the pieces of the brain that they need to be observing. And at first this was really hard because looking at all of these, you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? But one of my mentors was actually really helpful for me. Her name was Sierra. I was going through this process. I was like, oh my goodness, everything looks the same. How can I change this? And she's standing 10 feet away from me, and she's like, oh, that piece is a good one, and just points it, and I'm just looking across from 10 feet away, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, and then she's like, yeah, that one, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And so she comes over and she helped me with the little tiny paintbrush, and then helped me pull the pieces apart. So eventually it comes to the good slices that they need to analyze for the brain, and we eventually stain those. Other outside learning projects, we did a lot of reading, reading essays. I was there with another intern, so that was really fun. She had a car too, so we could actually go around places. I didn't take my car because I didn't think of it. That was a brilliant idea on her behalf, but personally, I didn't. When we first got there, they gave us a packet of a bunch of essays and papers. Some of them actually were unedited, straight from our mentors, the doctorates. And we got to read through the papers about a lot of different papers about neuroscience. And one of the most interesting ones to me was the addiction cycle. So learning about the addiction cycle. There's 3 different stages. And then we actually got this reinforced by George F. Koob. We went to one of his presentations, and he held a presentation at UCSD, so we got to go experience that. Dr. George F. Koob was actually the old PI, principal investigator of the lab. So before it was the George lab, it was actually the Koob lab, and he's in the NHAAA, I believe. It's for alcohol. Really, absolutely, just a huge person in the field of neuroscience, and it was really cool. We got to meet him and talk to him and listen to his presentations. And we would run experiments in the morning for cocaine, the rats that were on cocaine, and then we'd have lunch. And in the middle is when we took time to do paperwork and stuff like that. So read papers, run data sets, and then in the night at like 6:30 was when the cocaine rats went in, or the oxycodone rats went in, because they ran overnight in 12-hour cycles. And so in the middle, that's when we would read all these papers and just enhance our knowledge of what was going on in the field of neuroscience. Fun things I did. Luckily for me, I stood in a really nice place in San Diego. I was really close to the beach. They had like 4 pools at my apartment complex, so these are 2 different ones. So I got to go swimming a lot. The people in my lab took me for sushi. I hated it, but I was glad they took me. I'll never eat it again. I also went bowling. This was in my apartment complex, so it was this basketball court. That was really fun. And I spent a lot of time at the beach because you're in San Diego and you're like 10 minutes away from the beach, so if you don't go to the beach, something's wrong. But that was the majority of what I did. Tips, try and enjoy the city or place you're in, wherever you're at, if you're in a house or an apartment. Enjoy restaurants or local places and experience the culture. When I was trying to do that, it was actually really expensive because I was in San Diego. So I did what I could. 2 other things: learn as much as you can and ask a lot of questions, not just about your internship. I actually learned a lot of things about college in general and like moving up the ladder, getting a master's, bachelor's, and PhD, kind of like the road other people took before me. And so just learn as much as you can, not just about the internship, but about anything in general. Although I'm sure everyone will always be happy to help you. Thank you.